Have you ever felt like no matter how good you are, no matter how clean you eat, how many steps you hit in a day, or how hard you try, that it's just never enough? Because same. I spent years trying to be the perfect woman, the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect nutritionist, the perfect insert whatever title you want to give me. But despite all that, I still ended up feeling burnt out, frustrated, tired, heavier than I wanted to be, and wondering what the hell was wrong with me. Until I figured out this one shift that I'm sharing with you here today. I'm Genny Tonin, a holistic nutritionist, and I help women who are in midlife learn ways to drop excess body fat, increase their energy, and support their hormones so that they can feel better on the inside and the outside. But when it comes to weight loss and being healthy, I felt like I tried everything. I followed the rules. I counted calories. I counted macros. I weighed my food. I skipped meals. I cut out bad things. I said no to birthday cake and wine and sugar and all the joyful treats in life. But it didn't matter what I tried. Nothing stuck. Nothing worked for the long term. And I was constantly frustrated and constantly having to start over. Never, ever seeing, let alone keeping the results that I so desperately wanted. But the worst part was that I blamed myself. In my head, it was always my fault. I wasn't going at it right. I wasn't going hard enough or long enough or being strict enough with myself, that I didn't have enough discipline or willpower or something else. I was always to blame. It was always my fault. And I was always focused on how can I fix myself? I'm the problem. And that's really at the core of what today's video is about. It was that I was never enough. I was always the failure. This was the underlying theme in my life, that it all boiled down to my self-worth. And because I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted, I equated that with the fact that I must just simply not be good enough to deserve the results and get the results. The truth couldn't be further from that. So if you are struggling with this too, I see you and I hear you. And I know how much it hurts to feel like you are never enough. And I know how painful it is to have bought into that lie that society has sold us. And they've done a good job convincing us of that. I'm here to tell you something totally different, though, because that is a lie and that's not the truth. And it's not because you're not good enough. And if you haven't got the results, or if you're struggling to get the results that you want for yourself, it's not because you're flawed or because there's something wrong with you. It's not, I promise. It's that you haven't been shown the approach that works. What I know now that I didn't know then, back at the height of my struggle with all of this, is that our brains are not wired to respond positively to deprivation. So the whole diet and exercise industry is built on deprivation. Cut out the bad stuff, you'll get the results you want. Deprive yourself of all of the forbidden treats in life, and you'll get the results you want. We've been taught that the people that have what you and I want, those are the people that have been really good at depriving themselves. And that's not the truth. Talk to a successful person about deprivation, and they will not say that they deprived their way into success. I guarantee it. Experts in the field of creating lasting, sustainable habits, people like James Clear and Charles DeWitt, they explain in their books that the brain needs replacement, not just removal. If you're trying to white knuckle your way through change, it doesn't work. It doesn't, because it's not you that's the problem. Let me say that again for those of you in the back. It's not you that's the problem. So back in the day when I was struggling with this time and time and time again, I'd wake up and I'd already feel behind. I'd try to make everybody else's day work. I try to get everybody else around me, be it my kids and my husband, my dog, my coworkers, whoever it was. I try to get them set up with whatever they needed so that they would be happy and they would be content. And I would just neglect myself, do things like skip breakfast so that I could be good and save all of those calories and get ahead of the game, right? And then maybe lunch was grab a bite of leftovers and a handful of almonds and just restrict. And then look at all these calories I've saved that I haven't eaten today. Oh my goodness, I'm on the right path. I'm going to get amazing results. And then by the time nighttime came around, I would feel exhausted because I hadn't taken care of myself. I hadn't nourished myself in any way. It's spent all my energy trying to appease all of the people around me in whatever it is that they needed, while completely neglecting myself, my needs, let alone my wants and desires. And then I'd lay in bed at night after I undoubtedly had overindulged in something to make up for all of that deprivation all day long. Maybe it was wine or chocolates, or I stayed up too late watching something stupid on a screen. But then I'd lie in bed and I'd wonder, what the hell is wrong with me? Why can't I just stick with this? Why can't I get this right? Why can't I figure this out? Why don't I have any self-control? Why is this happening again? And I don't know how many times in my life, how many days I repeated some variation of this same pattern. And I wasn't lazy. I was hungry. I was exhausted. I wasn't taking care of my needs or my pleasures in life. And as a woman in this society, I was taught to celebrate that. That was the badge of honor. Give to everyone else, neglect yourself, everything will be okay. What a lie. So honestly, I thought weight loss was a formula that I just couldn't crack. Like the Da Vinci Code of midlife metabolism. I just hadn't been smart enough to solve the problem yet. So if you have ever felt like you are trying so hard, desperately, to do everything right, but you're not getting anywhere, you feel like you're going nowhere, then drop a me too in the comments so that other women can see that they're not alone in this vicious cycle, and we can start to lift each other up and recognize what we're doing to ourselves. And if you're ready for a more nourishing and sustainable and rewarding way to finally move forward, then be sure to subscribe to this channel. It's a free way that you can contribute to information like this getting out and shared with the countless women that so desperately need to hear this. And then finally, I had a shift. I realized something that finally worked in a whole different way than everything I had tried up to that point. I had to learn to stop punishing myself. I had to stop looking at my body as a problem that I had to punish into submission. I had to start looking at myself like a garden I wanted to nourish. Now, I don't pretend for 1 minute that I'm good at gardening, but I like it. And the most basic thing that I understand about gardening is that in order to get the flowers or the vegetables or whatever it is that you want to grow in your garden, in order to get that beautiful harvest, you need to care for and nourish that garden. You need to give it all of the ingredients it needs. You need to give it lots of sunlight. You need to give it lots of water. You need to have the soil be nice and healthy and full of all the nutrients that the plants require so that they can grow and thrive. And that's how you get the beautiful harvest. You don't punish a garden into submission. You don't strip it of all of the ingredients it requires in order to grow and thrive. And I realized I had to start treating myself like a garden. I had to focus on the things I needed to add in instead of obsessing about all the things that I had to subtract. So I focused on adding things like more protein, more real meals made from real ingredients, more hydration, more sleep, more grace. And I also didn't overhaul everything all at once. Now, what worked for me was that I didn't overhaul everything at once. To be honest, when I had this realization, I was at a point where I was exhausted and I was frustrated and I felt pretty empty. And I didn't have the capacity at that time to overhaul everything. It just felt like too much. So the way I started was I started focusing on adding in protein, more protein at every meal, starting with learning how to get 30 grams of protein in at every meal, especially my breakfast. That was where I began. And that one shift, well, it helped me in so many ways. It started to give me energy. It helped with my cravings. And I started to feel sane again. Because the truth is that women in today's society, we are taught to be everything to everyone around us. Yet we're never supposed to be too much. We're supposed to be thin, but not obsessed with being thin. We're supposed to be driven, but not intimidating. We're supposed to be successful, but not selfless. So just like the Barbie movie monologue, we're taught that you always have to be extraordinary, but somehow you're still always doing it wrong. What a terrible message. That's the trap. And that's the pit that most of us can never dig ourselves out of. But if you're feeling that way, you're not broken. You're just exhausted from trying to live up to an impossible standard that doesn't work. So when I finally learned how to shift from restriction to nourishment, I lost weight, but I didn't just lose weight. I began to regain my power. I had fewer cravings. I had more energy. I had better sleep. I felt more connected and in control of my body. And the most important thing, I felt like I had more peace. I was more confident in who I was and more comfortable in my own skin. Even though I wasn't perfect and I didn't have the most amazing transformation before and after photo-worthy turnaround at that point, I was comfortable in my own skin. And that is something that is beyond value because I felt like me again. And I don't think I'd felt like that since I was a kid. And it was at that point that I finally felt okay with being me. Like it or not, I was me and I was imperfect, but I was figuring out how to care for myself in the best way I knew how. You don't need to be a tiny little thing to be worthy as a woman. You don't need to be in a size 0 to be healthy. You don't need to shrink to be worthy. And if no one's told you lately, you are enough, exactly how you are in this moment. And learning to care for yourself is one of the most wonderful and healing things that you can do for yourself in this lifetime. So I want to know, what's one thing that you're going to add into your life starting this week to support yourself, your body, your health, your happiness? Please leave it in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to cheer you on. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.